I don't. We tried 2 years ago. I don't know if you're into that, but we started.
Just like our strategic plan. That was the strategic plan.
Okay. It's 5:30. Dom, do we have you with us? Oh, yep, I see your name up there now. It's my understanding you'll be providing board education this evening. Is that correct? Dom, can you hear me? Yeah. Audio issue. On, right. Dom, can you hear us?
We can't hear him talking. We can't.
Oh, Lena, you can hear us though? Anyone else on that can confirm they can hear us?
I can hear
I
you.
can hear you.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
I just sent Dom a chat, so we'll see if he sees it. 1 sec, he says.
Thank you. Well, for those of us who you
How
can
about
hear. Oh, there you are. There you are.
Yay!
Good evening.
This is fantastic. Good evening, everybody. How are you?
Well, how are you?
Good, thank you. Sorry about that. I'm in a Best Western in Seattle, so I had a feeling I was going to have some technology problems again. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We have a rule around here that if you speak on mute, you owe us $1. So.
Oh, really? I probably owe you about $50 by now.
We have a jar.
Okay, I'm going to get started. As you know, I'm not Jeff, who was supposed to be in this meeting today doing a GPO presentation, and I'm certainly not Julie either, our strategic planning director. But Julie's busy with a survey at another hospital, so she got tied up, and Jeff had another conflict as well, so we'll do GPO at another time. And I'd like to break this session into 2 potential educational sessions. The first one talking about strategic planning, and then what I'd like to do in another session is, and I'll probably get Julie to do that one, is to take you through the contents and the process of actually putting together the management action plan. So there are 2 different things that go on here. The first one is developing a strategic plan for the hospital. And the second really, really important part after that is actually developing the management action plan, which is really where the rubber meets the road, and that's where all the hard work gets done by the leadership team in terms of putting all the tactics together to execute on the overall strat plan. So, as I've said before, as I've mentioned before in other meetings or another meeting before, the board's role is primarily around vision and strategy for the hospital. Those are probably the 2 most important components for the board. So this particular responsibility of strat planning is something that really involves the board in a very meaningful manner, a very purposeful manner, and it is fairly time consuming. It's probably takes in the region of 3 to 4 months to complete a good strategic plan. And then the management action plan probably takes another month to 6 weeks to finish that. So let's just get into this. Thank you, Jan. If you wouldn't mind hitting the next slide, please. So really, there are 4 different ways that strategic planning has or now differs from years in the past. very quickly. The environment has evolved and is changing at an even faster pace. The competitive environment is much more intense than at any other time in the past. The financial underpinning of healthcare has been destabilized, and the time frame within which to act and generate results is increasingly shortened. Next one, please, Jan. So what are the fundamentals in terms of a solid strat plan? The process addresses where are we now, where should we be going, how will we get there, and most importantly, how will we know if we are successful, and how do we put in tools and KPIs to make sure we can measure that success. Next slide, please. Next one, please. You can just add a few there. Just hit your button 3 times or two or 3 times. There we go. Perfect. So, you know, I'm sure you've seen this before in business, in business situations and in corporate environments or even other environments. Really, the most important thing is getting the hospital in a direction where the very last arrow is what everybody's concentrating on, where there are boundaries, and the strategic planning has everybody singing from the same song sheet and marching down the same avenue. Next slide, please. So strat planning. Next one, please. So the first thing that we look at is we look at really getting a common vision with regards to the hospital's mission and vision. We then work on the strategic plan itself, and then followed by a budget outline, and then what I spoke about earlier on the implementation plan, or the management action plan is what we call it. We call it a map. And that last item after the strat planning has been done is the area which is the most important area, because that's where business plans are outlined. A medical staff development plan is put together, a facility master plan, a marketing plan, very importantly, an information technology plan. And within the business plans, there's a whole lot of other areas. There are plans within the business plan itself. There's a plan for instance, people. You know, what is our strategy for people? There's a plan for growth. What are we going to do for growth? What are we going to do in terms of quality, etc. Next slide, please. This is just an overall planning cycle for our strategic planning. We look at, you know, we determine the overall readiness. We look at the planning process itself. Very importantly, we perform a situation analysis. We need to understand exactly where you sit right now before we can proceed. Then we identify the strategic direction. We formulate the strategies, develop the implementation plan, and most importantly, we have avenues to measure the results. Next slide, please. Hit it again, please, Jan. Again. 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 Thank you. So strategies, you know, just in terms of understanding the different areas of the strategy, strategies are there to specify how to achieve the vision of the hospital. The goals are to describe general ends towards which the organization will direct its efforts for the next 3 years. And then the objectives are to be measurable, realistic, and feasible. The management action plan are the tactics and the action steps, the individual steps that action teams take to implement the initiatives outlined in the strategic plan. So in most cases, what we encourage, and the majority of our hospitals do this, they meet on an average of at least 2 weeks. Some of them even meet as a leadership team every single week to look at their progress on the management action plan. It's really, really important that it becomes a live document. Everybody becomes very familiar. There's ownership, there's accountability by each of the members of the leadership team to take 1 or 2 specific areas of the action plan and take ownership of that and drive it through completely. Next slide, please. You can hit it again, please, Jan. Oh, sorry, I jumped ahead. If you could go back one. Sorry about this. There we go, great. So phase one, the first of all is to actually determine the overall readiness for the hospital to actually begin doing it. Identifying the planning goals and the purpose. And then very importantly is to create a planning committee. So this is where I would recommend that a couple of the board members or a few of the board members actually become the custodians for the strategic planning process, and a planning committee is actually put in place. Next slide, please. Going the other way. Phase two, what we will do is we'll identify together with the board the participants who should be involved in the strat planning process. We will put together and recommend a time frame. We'll also, from our side, put together the resources that are needed to actually execute on it. We will then clarify roles, responsibilities, and assign accountability, and determine a realistic schedule of meetings and activities. I just want to warn everybody up front, there is a lot of time involved in a strat plan. So whoever's involved in, the steering committee for the strategic plan, I can give you, a better idea of how much time is involved. But overall, as I said earlier on, takes in the region of about 3 months to execute a full strategic plan. And it takes anything from a month to 2 months to actually finalize the management action plan. Next slide, please. So the situation analysis would be phase 3. It's really, really important that that health tech brings to the table the most up-to-date data. We grab data from CMS and other sources so that we can have a really good look at analyzing current trends in your hospital region, look at market share with your competitors, and just overall information about players in the marketplace. The interviews are pretty time consuming. The interviews will take normally probably a month, maybe even up to 6 weeks to perform. We normally conduct somewhere in the region of 20 to 30 interviews with people at the hospital. Very importantly, we create a strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats, a SWOT analysis, and look at critical issues that might be outside issues or even internal issues that might be important to the overall plan. And then we develop and review a 5-year financial forecast. We've actually changed this to a 2 to 3 year financial forecast. 5 years is too far out for us these days. Next slide, please, Jan. We then, we all get into a room for a day, at least one day, and we look at reviewing the hospital mission, the vision, the values, and make absolutely sure that everybody is in alignment with those 3 areas, because that really is your North Star. And then we develop a consensus around the overall strategic direction. Next slide, please. Then we get into the heavy stuff. We start developing and looking at strategies, goals, and the objectives. We reach consensus as a team, or the board reaches consensus as a team on strategies, goals, objectives, and success measures. We then complete the strategic planning document at the end of that day. And once the planning document is completed, we actually then ask for the strategic plan to be signed off and approved by the board. Next slide, please. And this is where the handoff becomes essential. This is where really even though the leadership team and the board has been actively involved in developing the strat plan together, it's now really the CEO and the leadership team's responsibility to actually put the strat plan into action. So this is where the MAP plan is actually put together. The leadership team sits down, they look at the actual specific tactics timelines, and put together a budget, initiate the individual business plans, the marketing plan, facility plan, and from a tactical point of view, and then work out the actual execution and a timeline for that execution. How much work needs to be done this month? What work needs to be done this month versus next month? Where do we want to be in 3 months' time? Where do we want to be in 6 months' time? And what do we need to achieve within the 12 months in the next calendar year? And then typically, and I highly encourage this, I just came out of a board meeting yesterday at another hospital where they presented their quarterly update to the board on where they stood on their management action plan and the progress that they're making, that they have been making. And it really, really is nice and really is good for the board to see and get these quarterly updates where they can see all the progress that is being made on a monthly basis. So these quarterly updates are really, really important. I do also want to point out that something for the board to consider is that in the past, we've refrained from putting together a strategic plan with an interim CEO. And the reason why we've done that is because it's such a critical component for the new CEO and the new leader of the hospital to be completely happy with. And that alignment with the board of directors and the CEO and the leadership team is just so critically important. We have had situations in the past where we've put a strat plan together with an interim CEO, and then the new permanent CEO comes in, and they don't adopt it because they haven't been involved in the process. There's certain things that they might not be happy with, and the overall problem becomes one of ownership. And if the ownership is not there, we just don't believe that there's going to be the greatest chance of success. So that's something I just wanted to point out as being really important. That doesn't mean that we can't do it with an interim CEO, but I just wanted to say that in the past, that's been our greatest experience of doing it with the permanent. And then the last phase is developing the scoreboard indicators. So, for instance, if one of the strategies is to get a 70% and above score on the hospital engagement employee satisfaction survey, you've got to have indicators built into to achieve that. And then communicate to the board staff and the medical staff, and then continually measure and continually report so that it's kept up as a completely live document. Next slide, please. So the benefits of strategic planning, obviously, many of these are completely obvious. It allows the hospital to operate with a vision and not just circumstances. And the stakeholders and everybody in the hospital will know the organization's future vision. It brings clarity with a roadmap to obtain that vision. It gives everybody the opportunity to gather inputs and ideas from all parts of the hospital on what can be done to ensure future success, and it eliminates barriers to that success. It generates commitment, motivation, and engagement. This is a really, really important aspect because there's nothing, I'm sure all of you will agree with me, there's nothing worse than hearing water cooler conversations in a hospital where people are saying, well, I don't really know what's going on there, or I don't really know why we're doing that, or I don't understand why that decision was made. If everybody understands and has insight to the overall strategic plan, then everybody understands where they're going to. And then organizational collaboration and teamwork, using the same playbook and pulling in the same direction, and accountability. Everybody needs to be accountability, and everybody needs to be able to make progress on those goals as individuals as well as team members. Next slide, please. That's it. 10 minutes before cutoff time.
Thank you, Dom.
My pleasure. Any questions?
I have a couple, I guess. Let me go back to some of those slides. So a lot of these steps, you know, as you were going through all of the different ones, I guess I'm just trying to get an idea of, you know, which pieces the board is doing, which pieces, say your leadership is doing, what pieces you and the health tech team would be doing. In terms
Okay.
of, say, like, you know, phases.
Yep. So, Ashley, the heavy lifting in the beginning is done. You know, a lot of those phases involve everyone. But the heavy lifting right up front is done on our side with regards to setting up the interviews, getting individual interviews done. So that's definitely a health tech thing. And then once we arrive on a strat planning full session day, and we arrive on that date, then everyone is involved in that meeting. The board is involved. Probably 3 representatives from health tech are there, as well as the leadership team. And of course, you know, this can be made up. I mean, I'm just talking about the way we normally do it. This doesn't mean that, you know, that this is the way you have to do it. But what we typically do is we have our strategic planning director who also acts as a facilitator. We don't want anyone on the board or in the leadership team to be a facilitator or a moderator for the strat planning session, because they need to, you know, there needs to be theater of the mind, and they need to concentrate on their providing their input and providing their strategic thinking. That's why an outside facilitator or somebody from health tech is. It also just keeps the strat planning session very carefully dialed in with regards to time constraints. You know, a certain amount of time is spent on mission, vision, and values, so that each, you know, we kind of know how much time needs to be spent in each quadrant, kind of thing. And then after the strat planning day, obviously the most important part is actually building the strategy and getting into those discussions, right? Before the strategic planning day actually happens, there is a lot of conversation between the strat planning director, Julie, and the CEO, because it's really important that a lot of the information from the CEO is gathered and the CEO's vision is put there. But on the day of the strat planning session, that's when the board really gets involved with their input. And then afterwards, it's completely our responsibility to put together the strat planning document itself. And that's the final document is then approved by the CEO, and then it goes to the board for the board to sign off on. And then the next step after that is very, very much leadership team and CEO, CFO, etc., to actually put together the action plan. Does that help?
It does, yeah. So kind of the main board involvement is probably going to be a day-long meeting, it sounds like, to
Yes.
everybody talk through. Okay.
Yes, and then the idea would be for each of the board members to be interviewed individually as well prior to that. So that's probably, you know, a couple of hours with our strat planning team.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
I'm really looking forward to this process and diving in. Like,
Yeah, it's really, I'm very, very passionate about strategic planning. I think Ashley and Taylor experienced that firsthand at our conference. The strat planning is, I like it because there's also a real creative element involved. What I'd really like to do is, you know, it doesn't have to be in the next board meeting's education session, maybe the one after that. We need to actually work on that calendar and what that looks like. But when you see an example of the management action plan, I think you'll really, really get excited because you'll see how a strat plan is actually pulled into a tactical document.
I guess another question or comment is if you had examples from other organizations you could share with us to just kind of get an idea of what that looks like.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to share a few pages from certain sections, which I think you'll find the most meaningful. I'll be very happy to do that.
anybody else have questions for Dom?
I have a question, but I just like to make a comment. I've worked with Health Tech doing a strategic plan from a nursing perspective. Then we take that overall hospital document and say, okay, what can hospital do or what can nursing do to help drive the specific goals that are underneath there, whether it is people development. And then we drill it down to the unit level. And then we say to our charge nurses, what do you need for charge nurse development? What do our new grads need? How many associate degree nurses do we have that we'd like to bump them to a bachelor's prepared nurse? So it gives you the whole gamut all the way down to staff level that feeds all the way back up to the overall strategic plan. So they're a lot of fun and it's a working document. It's not something that you just do and say, okay, we're done with that. Let's put it on the shelf. So that you come back every few months to say, this is what we targeted this quarter. And these were our goals. And we did 3 of the 4 goals. And so we're going to be moving on to this next thing. Just to put it in perspective of how it's used. And do the same thing for medical staff, education, for recruiting. One of the strategic goals is to recruit 4 primary care providers. That goes in the strategic plan. And then there's tactics that go with that. Say, how do we bring those in? How do we onboard them? And where are they going to be located? So all of that gets spelled out. So everybody knows. And it's not, okay, they're here now what?
Thanks for the input.
Sure.
Thank you.
I guess one more question to that too. Is this something that we kind of repeat or at least revisit once a year? Is it on like a 2 or 3 year basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sorry, I should have covered that. We normally do it every 3 years. So what we like to do, and that doesn't mean we have to do it every 3 years, but that's what we find works pretty well. But what is really, really important is on an annual basis to have a checkup, you know, to have a sort of diagnostic and have a look at it, to sit down together every single year and to say, okay, well, I think that we need to relook at that, you know, specific discipline, or so much has changed in this particular area. I think we might need to rewrite that as a mini strategy and then build it back into the overall plan because that particular area is no longer current. So even though I say it's every 3 years, you know, the mini strategy and the checkup session every year is really, really important. And I think that, you know, as long as you're doing the quarterly updates, you know, you're very quickly going to see, you know, okay, well, we need to pivot in this particular area because this is not going to be practical anymore, or it's no longer going to be relevant anymore, or, you know, there's an outside threat and we need to make a change.
Okay, thank you so much, Dom. We appreciate the instruction.
That's absolutely my pleasure. Thank you.
Right. This puts us at our meeting beginning time. Does anyone need a brief recess before we dive in? Okay. All right, well, let's call this meeting to order then. To screen. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone tonight. It's Wednesday, November 19th, our regular monthly meeting that's obviously a little early due to the holiday next week, but we're grateful you're all here. And I would ask that you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, as well, liberty and justice.
Thank you. Okay, tonight before we begin, we need to set the agenda, but I'd like to ask that we consider an additional item under new business. This would be item 6F, I guess we could put it as, and that would be to allow for signatory authority for the upcoming October payout. Are there any other changes to the agenda, Bill, specifically that you're aware of need to be made? Okay. Right. Anyone else have any input? Okay. I will ask for a motion to set the agenda then so we can dive right in.
I'm trying to make a motion to set the agenda.
Thank you, Ashley, with the motion.
I'll second.
And a second by Taylor. Any further comments? Okay, on the motion to set the agenda, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, first item on the agenda tonight after that is a consent agenda for policies and job descriptions. Don't believe we have any job descriptions tonight, but we have 4 policies or revised policies that we're considering. Governing body responsibilities, medical staff responsibilities, review and approval of policies, guidelines and procedures, and scope of services. Someone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, I would move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Kenda.
I'll second.
We have a second by Taylor. Are there questions, concerns that you'd like to raise to leadership?
I just have a couple questions. On the governing body responsibilities, is that like a specific requirement, I'm guessing? That,
So I would describe it as it's operationalizing your bylaws.
okay,
So the bylaws define
Yeah.
from a corporate or legal perspective.
okay,
This makes it more day-to-day operationalizing.
okay. Yes, I wondered about that as, the item A, I guess, says it's defined by the bylaws. So these two are, I guess, in.
Correct.
Okay. Right. And then I guess just a thought that I had, how can we as a board, and almost similar to strategic planning, right? Like visit these and talk about, how we're meeting these, how we're not. Make sure that we're.
I believe if I remember correctly, we revisit them and anyway, as
Okay, as
policy.
our bylaws.
No, as
Just
policy
each.
in accordance with our understanding. Is that a correct statement?
And so
If I remember.
the review of the policies, annually, I think you're asking maybe a little bit different question. That's doing an evaluation. How well are they working?
Right.
Are we in compliance with them?
Yes, that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, are we complying with all of these things as a board? Not.
And I think
What
that
do we
would
do
be a
differently?
great step to include in the process where the board does its annual evaluation. So once a year, the board should be looking at how it is performing itself. And typically you get input from the medical staff, from senior leadership. But we could add an element that would then say, this is the list of board policies. Those meeting our needs, how are we doing? Like that, I think that would be a very nice addition to the annual.
Is there a particular time of the year usually do that?
I haven't seen boards have a particular time.
Would it be
Seems like
beneficial?
the end of the year would be.
Well, that's what I was just about to think, is at the end of the year, almost like when officers and stuff like that is viewed, is that correct? Isn't that done at the end of the year as well?
Any further questions? Okay, so we have a motion to approve the consent agenda and a second. All those in favor of that approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next item under that heading is approval of meeting minutes, and we have 3 meetings, October 8th, October 15th, and October 29th, regular meeting with corresponding executive session minutes that have been provided. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those minutes? Yes. Okay. Open the floor for action in that regard.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion to approve meeting minutes from October 8th, October 15th, and October 29th in executive session.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. We have a motion
I'll second.
and a second. Thank you, Taylor. Any questions or concerns? Minutes? All right, I'll ask for a vote then. All in favor of the motion to approve the meeting minutes as requested, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, at this time, I'll open the floor up for public comment. Teams who wishes to comment. We're in the room. Everyone's so quiet tonight. Anybody have public comment? Okay, then. We'll carry on. Next item on the agenda is committee reports, and first subtopic is building committee. I'm actually not going to report on that. I'm just going to turn the time over very briefly to Lena to give an update as we are kind of winding down construction. So Lena, would you like to speak to
Sure.
construction?
You bet. Good evening, everyone. Construction is winding down, which is music to our ears. I think in our most recent meeting this week, I think we have 4 things left on our punch list, which is just incredible. So government shutdown is over finally, and the USDA came back and immediately approved our September pay app. So we are quickly working on the October pay app to try and get that all caught up. The government shutdown was not great timing, but that's okay. We're kind of catching up. Now kind of our focus is, again, those 4 things on the punch list, which are really dependent on materials coming in on time. And then finalizing all of the paperwork with the USDA and Layton and so forth. So getting really close.
Lena?
What do you think the timeline looks like, Lena, for those remaining punch list items and then finalizing all the paperwork? What are we talking?
Yeah. So one of the things, like, for example, which is a silly thing, is the crank shift thing for the gift shop. That's like December 12th that comes in. So that's just like super random. But the rest of them, they are wrapping up a bunch of things this week, wrapping up a bunch of things next week. So the hope is that everything will be done by the end of the month, of this month of November. And then the paperwork is a whole nother beast, right, in and of itself. But we've started working on it and are gathering all the documents and attachments and so forth. So hoping kind of right along the same timeline, maybe into the first week in December. We're also still waiting for the USDA to set our closing date. And a lot of that is dependent on the documentation and what they have. And just finalizing all of the bond paperwork on their side as well. So waiting for that date, and that'll give us a better idea.
The original goal was before the end of the year. Have the loan closed, but with the shutdown and being so extended, I don't.
Okay.
Hopeful.
And if the delay means the delay in payments, then the longer it's, the better.
This is.
It does. It does. And so that is a good point.
This is true. Okay, any other questions for Lena? Okay. Thank you, Lena.
You
All right,
bet.
next item on the agenda is foundation. So I'll turn the time over to Carrie.
Do you guys have the attachment in there? I brought paper if you want it. Okay, you guys can see it. Perfect. You don't need paper.
Yours is me. No, mine's not opening either.
Oh, back to the paper.
You'll get this on.
Thank you.
So the top part's easy. We still have 1.4 million in the treasury management account, about 50,000 in the checking account. We made our portion of payment on the September pay app for 215,000. So we're still anticipating about $500,000 left over, but we won't know until we get the last pay applications, of course. The sanctuary, they're working on the stained glass. They're thinking of going with fused glass to make it quicker, simpler, which is great. The employee break area, we think might be done in the spring instead. We're not sure exactly. And then the marketplace was installed. So if you remember, the foundation was tasked with filling that gift shop area. And so we got the marketplace in there today, and it's great. People have been buying snacks and beef jerky and Cheez-Its. Yeah. Yeah, there were people in there at 7 a.m. So they installed it at midnight to avoid disrupting anything, which was great. So it was like elves in the shoemaker. It just appeared. It's great. So it's there. You guys, both boards gave us permission to accept Lori McLean's piano and have JJ Huntley organize fundraising for it. Lori worked for the Sublette Center for a decade. If you don't know her, she's like a community, you guys, yeah, you know, she's a treasure to us. The piano's valued at $55,000, and she was hard to pin down on a price, but she finally said she'd like about $20,000. So we're going to have a fundraiser on December 2nd. I'm hoping to get some lead gifts and kind of have 10,000 in our pockets before we walk in the door, and maybe fundraise the whole thing in one night would be the idea. So, and then we would pass that money to Lori. Her cancer's returned. She's been really public about that. And so they left Montana to go to Huntsman. And so it would just be great to pay her sooner than later. So we don't see a 2-year piano campaign. We hope for a one-night piano campaign. Get that done. There's a lot of musicians coming. They're going to play locally. We timed it between dinner, and the Heritage Home residents will be there. So we've worked with the nursing staff and the activities director, and it'll be Christmas music. It'll be lovely. So yeah, fantastic. So that's there. Foundation 23, we raised $4,842, which was great. Any questions on anything not future project related? Great. So then if you turn to page 2, Bill brought to the foundation the immediate fundraising needs and a list of he called it fine tuning our operations, like medical equipment. Typically about 30% of annual giving is done between Thanksgiving and the end of the year. So we do not want to come and people have come to our website and just see a $10 million surgery suite and nothing else, because we want to have things within reach for people, and we don't want to discourage giving, especially at this time of year. So the immediate funding he asked for was the IT project list, which comes to $115,000. And Bill, I don't know if you want to speak to these or great. join.
So rather than doing a variety of requests, since all of these had an IT focus, we bundled them into a single request. And they reflect needs from across the organization. So in our clinic and a few other areas of the organization, we have workstations that are not Windows 11 compliant. And if you know, Windows 10 was no longer supported middle of October. So we needed 30 workstations. And so the price of those, including miscellaneous fees, was estimated at $30,000. We also need 20 additional just basic Microsoft licenses. And so that was estimated at 5,200. In this brand new building, we use voice over IP phone lines. Fax machines went plain old copper lines. And so they have these little magic boxes that can convert a VoIP into analog. And so they're 200 apiece. We need 3 of them. And it looks as if that may actually be changing, that CenturyLink may be providing that as part of the cost of the lines. So that was information Brett shared with me today. Mindray interfaces. So this is between some of our monitors. So we did buy some of the Mindray interfaces, but the specific example that I was given is when we do an EKG and we have the strip, it doesn't automatically go into the EMR. We have to scan it and then upload the scan into the EMR. This interface would allow that to happen automatically. So things like I have 2 EKG strips, one from you and one from you, and I inadvertently load yours and hers and hers. This would prevent that. So the explanation, fine-tuning operations, that's what these fall into. We learned that the networks between the Sublette Center and the hospital campus don't talk to each other. And as we're looking at moving people from the campus down to the Sublette Center, we need that interconnectivity. And so again, there's magic boxes that we can get that will allow that to happen. It's estimated at 25,000. And then the largest single one, and probably the one that some of the staff is the most excited about, is a new Human Resources Information System, HRIS. That will also involve an upgrade of our ADP, our payroll system. This is estimated at 46.6, and that's a gross number. We have a payroll software, in fact, I think it's called Payroll something, that allows us to go in and look at a job and see what the market is so that we can sort of see if our pay scales are right for the market. Well, with the new system, we're no longer going to need that. But when we install the new system, we're still going to need the old one, so we can't cancel right away. There will be a savings from doing the cancellation, but I like to keep capital dollars and operating dollars separate. So it was proposed that, well, we could look at the savings on the operating side and reduce the capital, but we need the capital all at once. And the savings would be projected over a 3-year time period. So I explained to the foundation board, it's my position that we should fund it up front, and then the district will benefit from the savings operationally over the next couple of years. So I just wanted to be clear that 46.6 is the gross number. The net number counting savings will actually be lower than that, but keeping capital dollars and operating dollars separate, I think this is a good approach. So you put it all together, 115,687.72. So that was the IT requests. You want me to keep going?
Keep going, yes.
So then,
And there's.
did you have questions on that one?
You guys like that picture?
So then,
Good.
Carrie talked about some of the smaller things. So we need 2 additional med-surg telemetry fixed monitors. We need 2 bedside portable monitors. We're giving prices on both of those. We need 8 IV pumps. So we bought 8. You really should have 1 for every room. So we have 8 rooms plus 4 ER rooms. So we should have a minimum of 12. But it's not uncommon that you'll need 2 or 3 on a single patient. It's also, in my experience, not uncommon that these things are a little bit finicky and you have 1 or 2 that's on the fritz at any single time. So my suggestion was we need 16. So we have 8. I was requesting another 8. And so if you look at the price, 18, almost 19,000 divided by 8, that would be a nice small number if someone wanted to give and say, I'm going to buy 1 IV pump or donate to buy 1 IV pump. So that's where that came from. And then the last one, Workstation on Wheels, this past Saturday, we had 20 patients in our emergency room, our biggest day yet. And what we learned is we don't have enough workstations on wheels. When we need to document on that many people, we just don't have enough. And so they're estimated at just over 10,000 a piece, so 21,150 for those. And then we don't have numbers yet, but looking forward in the laboratory, we are planning to add microbiology. In order to do that, we're going to need an incubator and a blood culture analyzer, so we're getting numbers on those. I estimate those numbers to be, so for an incubator, probably in the neighborhood of 20 to 40, or a blood culture analyzer, probably a little bit more than that. And then rather than serving our food in the Heritage Home via cafeteria tray, we're wanting to do it more family style or restaurant style. And so there's a $5,000 grant opportunity, and we're looking at using that to buy a portable steam table so that we could bring the food down to the Heritage Home in big trays and then serve it family style or restaurant style there. So that's what that one is. So I like to give people options and categories. So mid-range, right now our EMR in Heritage Home is different than the hospital and the clinics. For continuity of care, it really will make sense to have all of that be a single EMR. Not a small number, approximately 200,000 is what the estimate is. But we think it's appropriate to get that on the list and start planning for when we'll be able to do that. And then a non-traditional request for fundraising. We have a lot of sidewalks. And right now we've got a little 4-wheeler with a blade on it. Well, I think you all know a blade doesn't clean as well as you would like, but a brush gets right down to the cement. So that's what this unit is a powered, so you ride it, like think of it as a little tractor with a cab, and then it has a 48-inch power brush on it. And really cool unit because you can reverse the brush so you can come up to a building, and rather than throwing the snow at the building, you reverse it and you pull it away from the building. But if you think about it, many times when it snows all day, we often wait until it's done snowing to go out and make. This would allow us to maintain sidewalks every couple of hours so that as we got a couple of inches, then we could go out and we could maintain them. So that's what that request is. And then long-term, the MRI breast coil, as we look at our women's health component of our imaging department, we have DEXA, we have ultrasound, we have mammo, but our MRI doesn't have a breast coil. In order to take enhanced images of breasts, this coil is needed. We are working to be able to perform diagnostic mammography, and that will be sort of an immediate step. But down the road, we believe we're going to want an MRI breast coil. So that's not a today need, but I wanted to get it on the list for longer term. And then these are,
not to interrupt you, but I didn't put the long range in there.
Oh.
Just so
Long-
Taylor, I
long
think
term.
looking for it.
long-term fundraising. Yeah.
I stopped at the
Oh,
items
I
that we
see.
would put
So-
for your ends. And
So I'm
then
giving you extra credit.
extra
Yeah,
credit
no, I
is
haven't
great.
seen it from the foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stuff, but yeah,
Yeah.
Taylor.
And so then other
Mine-
things, other things that are on the long range, build out of the OR, and then construction of assisted living in the Sublette Center. And if you want, I'm happy to talk about that now, or I could talk about that during my report. And then the other project that we asked for immediate, and immediate was January funding, was converting some of the vacant nursing home rooms into dormitory space. So one of the challenges that we have with our traveling staff is we don't have affordable housing options for them. We just don't. And so while some people may not like living in what I'll call a dormitory environment, and we're calling it dormitory because each room won't have its own shower. Each room would have its own toilet and its own sink, but it will be community shower. So if you like the European description, it's a hostel. But we presented two different options to the foundation board. One was to redo 10 rooms, and that was estimated at 79,250. And then to do 16 rooms would be 110,000. The foundation board decided to fund the whole IT project, the 10-room option, so 79,250, and then the 2 workstation on wheels, 21,150. Those were the 3 projects that they were forwarding to this board for your review and consideration, but they were willing to fund those 3 categories of projects. And so the dormitory, well, maybe it's best to talk about it now. Rather than letting the Sublette Center space sit vacant until we figure out a long-range plan, what I'm proposing is that, and you've already heard about this, we're going to move down about 12 people and occupy offices. And then I want to use, so that if you imagine the 3 wings, the east, the west, and the north of the nursing home. So the east and the west will be the 2 dormitory wings, a guy's side and a girl's side. And then this side we're going to use for offices, and they'll take hardly any rehab, as well as some of the offices. So we've got, I think, a total of 7 offices, but I'm going to move like 12 people down, so we may need additional space. So using some of those other rooms. And then in the next couple of years, raise money for project planning for an assisted living. So we're going to have to come up with, I'm guessing it would be between 250 and 400,000 to develop a project for assisted living. And that would be gutting that whole area of the building. Once and for all, that would solve the mold issue. And then coming back and building it into assisted living units. And then that would give us time to fundraise for that. And we've talked about, are there external opportunities like community development block grant if we pass the 5th cent penny tax. There are some other governmental funding opportunities. I think this is a perfect opportunity for the city and the county to step up and assist us, and then traditional philanthropy, so that we could have a plan for how we would move forward. And this is not intended to compete with the surgery project. It's intended to give our donors a full palette of things that they could support. If surgery is what you were passionate about, you can support that. If you want assisted living, you can support that. So we're trying to have a variety of different things. And all of this would feed very nicely, by the way, into a strategic plan. But that's what the thinking is. Let's use this space for 2 or 3 years until we have the funds. And then by then the public health building will be available to us. And we'll be able to move all of the offices that are down there into that. What we'll have to figure out is the dormitory space, how we're going to replace it. But then we could go in and gut that whole area and turn it into assisted living. So all of that being said, the request for this board tonight is to approve the recommendation from the foundation board of the IT projects for just under 116,000, the 10 dormitory rooms for 79,250, and the 2 workstations on wheels for 21,150.
Bill, before we take any action, I hate to throw a monkey wrench in here, but I'm not sure why I didn't think to bring this up on Monday as I was listening, but we do have a little bit of room in construction still for some of that equipment. If you would like to rethink some of those numbers and shift them back into foundation to move elsewhere, I think we could easily do the IV pumps, the workstations on wheels, and probably the portable monitors.
So my request would be you tell me what we can shift, and I can either replace with projects or come up with new projects.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's a
I
great
think we
idea.
can definitely shift those 3 things. Although it would help to know a more particular cost on the telemetry monitors and the portable monitors we could possibly do.
All right. Excellent.
So
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah.
just just thought of that tonight. So,
Would that then come out of like contingency at this point? As just ours?
So instead of giving that money back,
yes,
I like that.
correct. We're trying to fill those needs.
So
So,
good.
yeah, if you could get me those exact numbers and some POs, I think we could take care of that.
Thank you.
So,
Kind of like the punch list on medical equipment side, right?
yeah, we're
Things
just,
that we didn't know were lacking.
so if you'd like to consider that and shift those around, I think
Very
we can
much.
do that.
Long term, thinking about the assisted living, has it been discussed? I know you brought up the city and the county and stuff about community reinvestment corporations, high-tech funding opportunities.
So those are all the sorts of things that we want to explore.
Okay, yes. Okay, I just want to make sure that that was on the radar too.
Yes.
The dormitory, how many new traveling are we currently housing?
So
or
we have
providing?
approximately 12 travelers in the Heritage Home, and I think we have 4 to 6 in the hospital.
So the 10 would cover every.
Not based on current, the
Yes,
other thing,
but-
we've actually been approached by some current employees whether or not they could rent dormitory space. So the full 16, I think at some point in time, probably will come into play. So just a little bit more on the shower. So each of the wings has a room that has a shower in it. So we're not going to use it as a dwelling. We're going to use it as a shower room. And then down this hall, there's the room where the big tub is. And the thinking is we take the big tub out and put a shower there. And then there's a restroom here, and it is large enough and it's tiled. We believe we can make that into a shower. So we would have a total of 4 showers available to folks.
Do we know what the payback is, say, on like the close to 80,000 based on what we're.
So if you figure the deal we have at the local hotel is $90 a night. So that's $2,700 a month for one person. So it's not,
Pretty short.
yes,
And I would say too, I think the spirit of the foundation board is that we were picking the smaller version of the dormitory because we felt like the workstations on wheels were urgent for nursing. We wanted to really take care of the nurses as the foundation board, but if we can roll some of those projects into construction, I think the foundation board wouldn't have any qualms of you all saying, we're gonna roll that to construction so we could do the 16 rooms and IT project. I think if you made that request to the foundation board tonight.
Yeah,
That
I
helps.
think that would be a good idea. Guys could get some exact numbers. I mean, it would be helpful.
Yep.
So,
we'll get that as soon as we can.
So typically we take action on,
Sorry.
typically we take action with them confirming the foundation.
And I think it's on the agenda as an action.
It
item.
is, it is, it's correct.
But we're stating that we can't take action until we have final numbers. Is that correct?
No, just on the one piece, we could approve the IT projects list. And we could make a motion to support the funding or the recommendation for the funding for the dormitory project contingent on final numbers or something to that effect, I suppose.
Hmm.
Does that sound reasonable? Those are both the recommendations that are coming from the foundation. So.
Make a motion to approve the IT projects as approved by the foundation board, as well as the dormitory project, the change to do the 16.
Okay, so that's. Do we want to go that far? Because I think they were just asking for the 10 now, but we. Not sure how to word that. Depends on how much money we can feed back into construction, I suppose. Right?
Well, let's approve the 10 and then I apologize, and then we can revisit the additional 6. I mean, that'll get started and I imagine it's not a big deal to say we're gonna keep going.
Correct.
I would amend my motion to revise my motion as approving the dormitory project for 10.
Okay,
Does it need to specify to move those funds into construction versus foundation?
I didn't say anything about that.
Confirm on my end.
I didn't say anything about that.
okay,
Second.
so we have a motion and a second. Are there further questions, points of discussion, concerns? Okay. So I'm gonna try to read that back so we get everything proper. On the motion to approve the the recommendations from the foundation board for the IT projects and the dormitory project for 10 rooms. Correct? And the second, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Do you all
Thank you, Bill.
feel like you need a motion to put those other items on the website, or I guess we're waiting until we know going into construction?
Yeah, let's wait just a hot minute
Hot minute, okay.
and see what I can do there.
Perfect.
I don't know, do we need approval?
Nope, those are all within.
If you want to put some things on the website before the end of the year, like that would really.
I kind of want to put some on before Thanksgiving, but do you have thoughts on, should I just,
So my suggestion would be put them on,
Yeah,
and if in fact we're able to move the dollars around in the construction budget, I'm sure we can have other projects.
I could
Yeah.
put them on just as fine tuning our medical equipment and then
That
say
might be-
such as blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, if it's not that specific piece of equipment, does
And
that?
if we have
That might
concerns, I'm
be
sure we
the
can
best.
reach out to donors and say, hey, we were able to pull this. Project. You'd like to.
Yes.
Yeah,
that to go forward.
absolutely. Okay. And then that doesn't, so we don't fundraise for anything without your direction. So would you like to give to put fine tuning our medical equipment needs as a year-end campaign on the website? You're just gonna do it.
yeah, I think,
I would appreciate that.
yeah, in a formal motion.
Yes.
Okay. Right.
I
Are
would
we,
make,
are we comfortable with that?
okay. Would make a motion to add to the foundation website, request for funding, fine tuning of medical equipment and operational.
Okay. We have a motion and a second regarding posting of medical equipment, fine tuning. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I just barely saw the highlighted part down here where you were asking for that specifically.
You're
I missed that earlier, so,
Yeah, this is great.
okay. All right, next, does anyone have any further questions for Foundation? Next item on the agenda then is Finance Committee, so I will turn the time over to Steve. Welcome, Steve and Kenda, and yeah, please come up to the table. I believe we have Michelle online also, so.
Before I jump into the financial report, do you have any questions for me about my background or why I'm here or anything like that?
The questions.
I don't know what Bill has shared previously, so.
Give us an
Okay, I currently live in a condo down the road here. My home is in Hastings, Minnesota. And I've had 25 years of executive level finance in hospitals, and before that, 20 years in the defense industry, working for defense contractors. So I have a little more varied background, and I grew up on a farm in Iowa. So just to throw another element in there. So, and my mom still lives on the farm. She's 91 years old. Excuse me, mows the lawn, has a big flower garden. Keeps very active. So hopefully I can have her longevity.
That's awesome.
So is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
I understand very well why you're here. I'm just wondering how we talked you into coming.
Well, I did work with Bill for 7 years in Taos, and he twisted my arm pretty hard. So, yeah, I did come out of retirement to do this. And I still question myself on a nightly basis, why am I doing this? But I'm glad to be here. It's a fascinating place, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Um, I have a routine that I developed over 25 years in reporting to the board. And I don't want to go into too much detail. So if I'm getting too detailed, let me know. If not detailed enough, let me know. But I kind of have a process. And Michelle and I have talked about it a little bit. For the board, I like to just touch on highlights that are significant variances from maybe what the original plan was. I know that Michelle was out for 3 months. It's been great working with Michelle the past week and a half. But there was a lot of, I'll say, DZA made entries that made sense to them, but were not consistent with the budget. So we have some stuff that's not necessarily in the right place, creating some of the variances that I'll address. So it's a less of a variance in this area, makes a bigger variance in another area once we get the corrected entries in. And she did send out revised October financials. I don't know if you were able to look at those, but most of that was the result of reclassifying some Apogee invoices. So there was $300,000 of Apogee that was not where we budgeted it, but in a different line. So I'll touch on that in just a moment. So I hope to also make some changes to the financial statements that get presented to you. And my intent is not to confuse, but hopefully to clarify things. I want to simplify what gets presented so it's easier to understand. It's easier for me, for whoever's in this role, to talk about the variances, because that's really the important part. You've already approved a budget. You know what's in there. How have we varied from that budget? That's really what we should be touching on. So that's my hope, is to get to that point sometime in the next couple of months. So jumping into the financial statements, the other thing that I'll probably do is change some of the titles that are more consistent with what a healthcare organization reflects. So we won't be talking about cost of sales. That's a manufacturing terminology. Those are adjustments to revenue in a healthcare environment. So just things like that. And I'll explain those as we make those changes. But looking at the financials, right page here also. So we have a lot of stuff in the income section, which I will rename as gross revenues, and we'll separate patient revenues from other revenues. So like rent and that kind of stuff, which really isn't patient related. So I think it's important to recognize where our patient revenues are and separate those other things differently. So in the future, you'll see that, and both inpatient and outpatient. EMS will be part of outpatient. We haven't decided if we'll have clinic as outpatient or if it will be its own line. Similarly with long-term care, that will probably be its own line. So we'll look at revenues in that fashion going forward. So for October, we did have a pretty significant variance to budget in our total gross revenues of about $1.2 million. So we're about 32% below budget for our gross revenues. Year to date, we're 4.8 behind, again, about 32%. So October was consistent with our year to date. It's too soon for me to tell why we're so far behind, but I suspect, especially because expenses are closer to budget, that volumes is a big part of why we have such a variance. And that's not to say that we're not productive, but what did we put in our budget that is so far different from what we're actually experiencing? So that's something that I'll be looking at over the next few weeks. We hope to have a revised budget for the second half of the year. I'm not sure when I can have that completed, but Bill wants me to give him a date. Michelle and I talked about it today. We hope that certainly by the end of December, we can have a revised budget. We won't go through the same process of doing an entire budget. It'll be heavily dependent on Michelle and I, and then getting some assumptions from some of the other senior leaders and some of the leaders within the organization. So we won't go to the same level of detail, but hopefully the revised budget is more realistic and reflective of what we expect to occur over the next 6 months, January through June. And hopefully that reduces some of this variance. I would like to think that we could just get the volumes magically appear and we'd be at budget with revenues, but I'm not sure that that's the case. So I don't want to spend a lot more time on gross revenues, but there is that cost of sales line that how it's represented currently, and that's our adjustments to revenue. And there are various things that go into adjusting those gross revenues, especially on the patient side. We have our contractual allowances, we have our bad debt write-offs, we have things like that. So in the future, I'll probably report a little more detail along those lines. But suffice it to say for tonight that we had favorable variances in October for those adjustments. Year to date is also slightly favorable by about 7%. So that improves what I call the net revenues, not your net income, but net revenues is typically how it's referred to in a healthcare environment. And after that, we go into, well, we would have other income, which would be another line, those rents and things like that. Then we get into expenses, and I do want to touch on a few of the expense variances that I noted over the past week and a half. Overall, slightly unfavorable to budget in October, but favorable year to date by about 4%. Wages, look on, if you look at the financial report here, it looks like wages are favorable, and they are compared to budget. However, we talked about the travelers already, and that's what offsets that wage positive variance. So we haven't maybe hired as many people as we anticipated. So our wages are favorable, but the contract labor is sucking that all up. Heritage House still has, I think Bill said 12. I heard another number earlier in the week. So, but the hospital's getting close to getting down to no travelers, but Heritage House still has quite a few. So that variance is going to remain high.
Heritage Home.
Heritage Home, sorry.
It's okay.
Give me a week. One board meeting, I can make those mistakes. If I make it again, then you can call me out on it. Heritage Home. Thank you, Bill, for pointing that out. On the second page, at least on the second page of what I have, drugs and medications, we had a very strong favorable variance there. So I'm not sure, again, what was budgeted versus what we're actually utilizing. What I have noticed in supplies is they're kind of all over the place. So medical supplies, office supplies, general supplies, we have a lot of categories. And there are variances in each one. Some are positive, some are negative. Are we expensing things to the same area that we budgeted? I can't tell that after a week, but as we go forward and we redo the budget, hopefully that kind of resolves a little bit and we can address it more directly. I did talk about the contract labor already, and you can see, at least on my report, which was before Michelle revised it, there was a $400,000 variance. And under service agreements, there was a $500,000 variance. And that's the real number that Michelle and I were trying to pin down earlier today when we identified the Apogee invoices being in a different location than what was budgeted. And there's some other things that contributed to that variance as well. Health tech invoices were budgeted under contract labor, but they're showing up when DZA did the journal entries in a different location. So Ocean is another service agreement that was budgeted in one place and showing up in a different place. So we've got some work to do to clean this stuff up so it's easier to address our variances to the budget, which is what I want to bring to the board. But since we have such a conglomerate of a lot of different things in the wrong places, it's really hard to make those analyses. Let's see, another thing that hasn't happened that we want to improve going forward is we may get some big invoices, and I'll use insurance as an example. We may get a $40,000 invoice for insurance. It's for 12 months, but it was put into 1 month. We really should be amortizing that over a period of time, over the period of performance for that contract, whether it's insurance or a service contract or something else. So we want to make some changes. I'm working with Michelle to develop kind of a desk policy. If it's more than $20,000 and it's a 12-month or longer period of time, we'll amortize that over the period of time. So you're not having these huge fluctuations because of one-time payments that really apply for the entire. Let's see, the one other significant non-cash expense that has not been occurring that I believe we should have in place. The building became operational and in service in August. We have not recognized any depreciation because all the funds are still in construction in progress. Just because it's in construction in progress doesn't mean we shouldn't be recognizing some of that expense because the asset was placed into service. So we have some work to do to figure out what that estimated depreciation should be. Once we clear out all the CIP, then those will be reversed and we can have the actual depreciation expense incur. But right now, there hasn't been anything, which is understating the expenses in the income statement. So right now we're showing, they say earlier, a $4.5 million loss. It's really probably larger than that because no depreciations. The hospital was in August, and I think Heritage Homes, did I say that correctly? Home? Heritage Home was in October. So there's varying dates that we have to work with. So that's going to take a little bit of work to make those estimates, but I think it's important to get those in the income statement going.
And if I could add, from a cost report perspective, having those expenses accurately tracked is really important because depreciation is a recognized cost, correct?
Absolutely.
So we really need to get those numbers there.
It does look like on page 8 of the October financials that there's some items on there for depreciation, but that's not including the hospital or here.
That's our existing assets that are already being depreciated on a
Okay.
regular basis.
Okay.
So this would be all the stuff related to the construction of the two facilities has not been depreciated at all. So yeah, we definitely want to get it in there. Certainly when all of the pay requests are done and we say the project is done and we've paid for everything, that's when we'll actually move all of the CIP because we'll be able to allocate it to the different elements of depreciation. So I'm getting more detailed than I wanted to, but in a hospital environment, auditors look to a basis for your your assignment of assets and the associated depreciation. They typically follow the American Hospital Association guidelines, which is a book that costs $79 that we're going to purchase. It gives the appropriate useful life and the depreciation guideline that's associated with that. So your walls have a different depreciable life than the concrete. Concrete will be 40 years. The walls, if we include all the plumbing and electrical that's in the walls, is usually 25 years. So we have to allocate all those things that are in the CIP accounts into individual units to then assign a useful life and depreciate over that. I hope that makes sense and it's not too much information.
Oh,
I'm always bordering on that too much information sometimes. So the last thing that I really want to talk about, the net operating income or ordinary income as it's listed on here was a loss of $1.5 million for October and $5.6 million year to date. And that doesn't really change with the reclassification of things that Michelle did earlier this afternoon. Then jumping to the balance sheet, I do want to develop some metrics for cash for the board to review. I think those are important things to review, our days of cash on hand. And I want to separate operating cash from all the construction funds that are still on the balance sheet because they're two different things. And it's the operating days of cash on hand that we really should be paying attention to. And then there's some things around patient receivables. So we have a total receivables of $9.8 million, but most of that is not patient receivables. And I like to focus on the patient receivables and what progress we're making against metrics in that arena. So in the future, I hope to have some of those metrics defined and identified and be able to share with the report so you can see our progress or not progress that we're making against what we've baselines that we should be trying to achieve. So I'm still getting my feet wet with financials. Been great working with Michelle. Hopefully I'll have a better report next month.
So if a lot of those 9 million in receivables are patient receivables.
Some of them are, and Michelle, you can probably chime in here. There are things that come from outside sources. I have to jump to the specific page. I know there was a line in there. Can find my right page.
I'm here. Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
So what are some of the non-patient receivables? So as I'm looking at this,
I mean, it's mainly the mill levy, and we have some grants. I mean, we have ARPA grants and some rental income from visiting providers.
the property tax receivable, the big one is the outstanding taxes of $4.3 million. So that by itself is bigger than our patient accounts receivable, which is 4.1, the net amount of the patient accounts receivable.
Are you confident, Steve, that you can get us to our first cost report?
I probably won't be here that long.
Okay.
Because the first cost report will, for the hospital, there's a long-term care cost report for Medicaid and Medicare. But the first cost report for the hospital, we do 5 months after the end of the fiscal year.
Okay. I had that wrong in my head, so thanks for reminding me of that.
But I hope to put into place a lot of things that will be necessary for reporting
To prepare.
when the auditors do start preparing the cost report. Michelle and I have talked about a lot of those. There's a lot of different allocations that need to take place. And whether we do those through our accounting system or we wait until the end of the year and the auditors do the allocation, there's a bunch of step down things that take place within the cost report software. So it's a matter of how easy is it for us to do internally using our accounting software, or what's easier to do from an audit standpoint through the step down process in the cost report software. And large organizations buy the cost report software themselves. It's several $100,000. But they have multiple facilities they use it for, and they do their own cost report, and they don't use the services of an audit company. We're not in position to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else you would like to know in the finances? Or is that more than enough? Probably more than enough. Some of it's introductory, and I apologize for that, but you know, there are things, a lot of things that I'd like to work on and get ready for the cost report and audit and other things that are associated with it.
Thank you very much. Anyone have questions for Steve?
Michelle, did I miss
It's a lot.
anything?
No, you didn't. Thank you.
Thank you both for being here. Yeah. Okay. It's behind us, Finance Committee. Next, that ends our committee reports. The next item on the agenda is leadership reports. And up first is Dr. Burnett with providers.
Well, good evening. I have for you tonight some information regarding the provider services that we've done the last September, over November. Before I get started, I'd like to give a great thank you to Vicki, who made this all possible and putting it together in presentable form. So I will hand these out and then we can over those.
It's always the nurses making you docs.
It's always a what? I am not gonna disagree with you. I'm gonna quote Joe Cocker of the Beatles and say, I get by with a little help from my friends. So as you'll see in here, what I've compiled here is the data for the last 3 months for the emergency department and for each clinic. And the clinics are broken down into nursing visits, provider visits, and urgent care. And so we can not necessarily look at the trend, because if you look at October, November's doing much better. But to start out with the emergency department, if you look at this graph, you can see that the total number of visits in August for the ED was 285, 272 in September, 231 in October. Out of those visits, the total number of transfers in August was 41, 46 in September, and 30 in October. I'm reading fast because I know you can read faster than I can speak. If you look at the ED visits for those months, you'll see where the ED visits that became inpatient clients. So in August, there were 13, September, there were 23, and in October, there were 14. So it gives you a breakdown of what we've done in the ED department. If you go to the next page, looking in August, you'll see that we have the Pinedale Medical Clinic and the Marlton Big Piney Clinic, and you'll see on there the number of nursing visits, primary care, and urgent care visits in each clinic. And I don't know, for the record, I need to read out those numbers. I think they're pretty self-explanatory, as well as with the Marlton Big Piney Clinic. If you turn a page, you'll see in September, similar reporting. You can compare the numbers as you later, and you can see what's reflected in terms of patient visits. You'll notice there is some increase in those numbers. September was a better month. However, when you look at October, you'll see that the numbers, well, the numbers in Pinedale went up. The numbers in Big Piney went down. But you can see, and I'm make this distinction because it gives you a total outlook of how many were nursing visits, how many were urgent care, and how many were seen in the primary care part. So I hope this is helpful for you each quarter as we look through this, and gives you some idea if we are working towards our goal of increasing productivity in the clinics. So it's the basis or background in that regard. Any questions? I have a lot of comments, but I will not offer them unless I'm asked.
We know what we had for emergency visits prior to hospital opening.
We broke up as we could. We didn't have the software that identified emergency visits. So we, a lot of analyzing between us. Was this emergency? The urgent care visits were identified as urgent. So I do have numbers back.
Well, and Vicki has numbers that could provide over the course of those years, potentially those patients that were seen that could have become hospital patients. But I'll remind you, we did not have an emergency department before August.
I guess the thing I was wondering is, have we seen that the emergency room, now that we have a full emergency room, is being more utilized than, say, it was before?
Well, it's hard to say if you just want to look at the statement that Bill made and Lane probably referenced as well. If you look at last Saturday, there was 20 people. So I mean, it's we're going to have to look at some of this over time, and some of it's going to be fluctuating depending on the season and so on. But this is a start to give you some kind of idea in terms of what's being utilized. Now, do I think we have room for improvement here? Yes, I do. Do I think that the concerns with how to increase those numbers are being addressed? Yes, Bill has done a very good job at that. We've had meetings with the staff. I think we've had good discussions and a better understanding of what it's going to take, both in terms of workflow, tools, how do we redefine roles in terms of trying to deal with technology and administrative time on the required by our providers, and how some of that may be shared in order to increase productivity. So I'm very optimistic that moving forward, we can get the support and that we can look at what we've discussed in order to move this forward to increase productivity, which we greatly need.
In regards to transfers,
Yes.
that number has gone down, and I'm sure there are multiple factors that contribute to that. But do you see, I feel like when we first opened, there was some difficulty in recognizing the transition and saying, okay, we don't have to send patient A or B anymore because we can admit them, but we're still in a different mode, you know, we're shipping people out and transferring. Do you feel like that's a component and we've kind of perfected that now?
I think we're moving in the right direction and progress towards that, but you know, you have to look at patient populations that come in and what we're being presented with.
Sure.
We still have shortcomings in terms of having to transfer people because of limitations we may have in terms of critical care or echocardiography to be able to evaluate stroke and congestive failure patients. So it depends on how many numbers of those patients come in as well. But yes, I think we're doing better in that regard.
And if I could add to that, this is doing a regular analysis, looking at our transfers, and he breaks it into 3 different categories. The ones that we could have retained had we had certain services. So the top ones would be the therapies, physical therapy, facial therapy, respiratory therapy, general surgery, and then if we had the critical step down unit type. So that's one category, and then ones that are more in a gray area, and then ones that clearly.
Yeah.
So I am pleased that we're looking on a regular basis at the appropriateness of transfers so that we can make sure we're retaining really as many patients as we can.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions on this? It's a work in progress. The other thing is we have interviewed 3 candidates for the 2 anticipated urgent care positions that we talked about with our staffing model. I anticipate that we will have a decision made either late this week or early next week on those candidates. I do think we're going to have to look at our projections for January, and that we might not be able to have these individuals on board by then for several reasons, not the least of which is trying to get insurance credentialing done, which oftentimes takes as much as 90 days, hopefully 60 days. But we will have to, and we're working on putting together an alternative plan, because we are going through with having our mid-levels in ED, which is going to leave us openings in the urgent care. And we're working on backup plans to use our existing providers to still be able to provide urgent care services at both clinics. Now, when we'll be able to go to the model as planned, earliest would be February, could be March. It's a work in progress. And I won't speak any further to that because I haven't had the chance to talk to staff yet.
I appreciate the direction
Okay.
in which things are moving.
Any other questions?
Have a hard time finding options for those.
No.
Us, have we been?
We had a file of people that were interested. However, most of those interested parties were interested in emergency department care. A lot of those withdrew themselves because they weren't interested in urgent care per se. We did find a couple from there, and then had another one by word of mouth that knew that we were looking. So we ended up with 3 qualified candidates that we could choose from, and we can make that choice. It's just a decision on when they can become available. Don't want to hire them before we can collect for their services. Yes. None.
That's critical.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Thanks, Doc.
Sorry I took up so much of your time.
Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, Dawn. Heritage Home.
You guys have the PowerPoint on your diligent or do you want to? Okay. Oh, thank you, Jan. Just go off that one. Okay, well, we're the Heritage Home. Go ahead. Advance. Can you advance the slide, Jan? Thank you. And this is going to be a format you should be used to. I think Elaine used it last time. So we're going to standardize format, which is really great. First pillar is service. I got the mic. Okay, the first pillar is service. And this is always my favorite time of year, right? We get to do Halloween. We moved to the new facility October 22nd. You already know that. As I sit before you today, memory care is already full. Our census is 41. And last Friday, we had the honor of hosting the Wyoming Alzheimer's Coalition. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, but for those of you who don't know, it's an interdisciplinary program headed up by Dr. Stern is a part of that, and she runs a really unique program out of Jackson called the Connections Program, specifically for people with various stages of dementia, and it's a holistic approach, so it's going to involve nutrition, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. We run cognitive exercises and activities specifically for that, and she follows quite a few of our patients. We have 11 on with her right now. And it was really great to meet her in person. She is such a wonderful person. If you ever get the opportunity to know her, really someone who leans into that. So lastly, Christmas is quickly approaching. We have lots and lots of things that happen in the month of December. So if you have free time and are interested in coming down, call April. She can plug you in somewhere. Okay, can you move forward, Jan? Thank you. Okay, so these are just my favorite pictures. And here's what I want to talk about. We spent about $5,000 in candy. That's historically what we do, right? So I was a little concerned that our numbers would be down. People being confused. Are we up at Heritage Home? Are we down at the old Sublette Center? We took an opportunity to make this a joint activity with our apartment residents down there. And so it turned out really well. We had, I think, 8 apartment residents that helped pass out candy, and they've allowed me to say there's Carolyn and Rita in the bottom right-hand corner. And I quit counting at a little over 320 is when my little clicker quit, and I'm not doing this by hand. And that was about, we still had 45 minutes or so to go. So it was a very well attended. I was really happy to have that. Yes, so many community members, many people saying thank you so much for being back down here. And so we're going to try to maintain that coming down to the Sublette Center. It's just a more natural flow in business downtown. But if it doesn't work out that way, I'm confident people want that candy. Okay, can you move forward?
Yes.
Yes.
Note that they were very generous.
Yeah, especially like if you're late, if you want your kids to get filled up one and done, come about. So this year also it was earlier. Normally it's 5 to 7. This year it was 4 to 6. So if you came around 7, you just kind of got buckets of candy. Not quite. Okay, so every month, we've talked about this before, we do our quality assurance, and these are the markers that are typically looked at by CMS, things like falls, weight loss, or weight gain. There's intentionally no data in that weight loss and weight gain because there was a glitch in the system when we transferred up with Matrix Care, because obviously Taylor, who lived in room 9, now lives in room 209 or vice versa. So they had to reformat everything and we lost some weight data. So better leave that empty. Now, pharmacy, that's something you should probably know about. In Sublette Center, we do have a pretty high amount of psychotropic medications. Now, so that makes us a focus facility. So state's going to look at that. Do you have your consents? Are you trying non-pharmacological interventions ahead of time? And it's really an exhaustive process. And so Dr. Stern is someone who utilizes those sometimes in the beginning, and then we taper off at the end. So you will see a higher rate, especially in comparison with other facilities in Wyoming, and especially ones that are not so much in the Jackson area that don't really get access to Dr. Stern. And so that does account for quite a lot of those numbers, but I'm confident with those. My team is confident with those, interdisciplinary with physicians as well. So med errors, we did have one, did not result in any harm to the patient. 15 skin concerns. Now these are not pressure ulcers, so as you see a couple of bruises, if you get a little cut on your hand, we have to make sure to document that. So there is nothing major in that area as well. No abuse, and you are always going to want to pay attention to that because abuse is a big deal. We've talked about that ad nauseum, and nobody ran away, which is really great considering we moved. So I was really worried that that number was going to be higher, but it is not. We had infections. Now understand, remember when we moved, we were just on the tail end of a COVID outbreak. So some of that did bleed over to this particular report. And you'll see that on the outbreak, per CMS guidelines, that was the COVID outbreak. So our residents have really taken a hit these last 2 months. Moving is one thing, getting COVID is one thing. Moving while you have COVID is something else entirely. And so I just really feel for them, but they're doing well and overall bouncing back from illness pretty well. And really, again, thankful for those private rooms. Okay, can you fast forward a little bit, Jen? Staffing. So we talked about 12 travelers, which I would really like 12 travelers, but we actually have 14 at this time. And actually, as I set before you today, we have 16, but 2 are already out, like they're leaving out. So I didn't count them in here. That breaks down to 9 CNAs, 2 LPNs, and 3 RNs. We knew some of this was going to happen. We've talked about this before. Coming in there, we have a whole new product line on memory care that we didn't really pre-plan for, because then your labor hours for Sublette Center would have been ridiculously high. So what are we doing to fix that? Do you want to fast forward, Jan? Okay, so our next CNA class is in February. We just ran one, and we're doing a job share plan with the hospital because our class kind of wanted to work that way, which is great. We really love having universal workers, people who can do long-term care and also hospital. So one of the things that was really great this week is we met with Vicki, and also Lane, to do a job share. So 2 weeks over on the inpatient side, 2 weeks on the nursing home side, because of course we want to maintain that continuity of care, especially in memory care. We probably won't job share in that area because we're moving on to the Shabazz concept, where the CNA is kind of a holistic worker, doing the housekeeping, doing activities. And so it's very important to keep that person well-trained and regularly back there. Those are our Western Wyoming students that were here. Last clinical was last week, and those are 4-year nursing students. Those are all in their 4th year. And so working real hard to get them to come back. And they had a great time. And the new building, by the way, did not help that. I mean, did not hurt that. They were very happy to be there. So beautiful, so much different than our old facility. So that was great. And then Bill has introduced a referral bonus for people who, refer a friend to us. And we really hope that with these 4, we can reduce that traveler rate. I'm going to be looking at some different labor hours model staffing plans, but not until after the 1st of the year, because we're still settling and people are a little bit high needs right now. Okay, do you want to fast forward? These are little finance shots. Those of you who are in finance committee have already seen that. Our Med A business went up. Average census has gone up. Medicare B business, that went up as well. We don't get a lot of reimbursement on that, but anyways, on to the next slide, Jan, because this is the one I really want to talk about. Okay. Lower left-hand corner, that VA business. So that is in terms of what your revenue is coming in, not the terms, the amount of people, right? So for our census, just to put it in perspective, was 1 VA patient back in February and only 3 in September. So you see it makes a pretty significant difference. that is a great partnership to have. So one of the things that we've committed to doing is making twice yearly, and might be bumping it up to quarterly, but visits over to Sheridan. And also we have pretty robust veterans community in Rock Springs because they have some clinics over there. So we meet with their clinicians over there and talk about who is at risk in the community. We were able to get Laura into some training with the VA to help learn how to help veterans access their liaisons to get those benefits. Because remember, it's not every veteran. Service-connected disability at 70% or greater, so it's a small subset of veterans. But we are sure happy to have that relationship and are one of the few. Well, we were the first, and now Jackson and Star Valley do it too, but that's okay because there's plenty to share. So that's really the thing that we're leaning into in terms of the next steps for product line. Okay, Jen, can you move forward? Okay, growth. What is next? So our team knows very well how to be a standalone nonprofit nursing home. Done that a really long time and arguably pretty successfully. But we're all sort of trying to get our feet under us of what does it mean to be part of a larger organization. So we're going to take field trips. This was a suggestion that we are very much hanging on to. So what we want to do is go to hospital-based skilled nursing facilities, not convalescent homes, because it's a totally different product line. To learn best practice. How are they working together? What's happening with that swing bed business? What is staying in the hospital versus what's converting to mid-A in the nursing home, and why do those things happen? So we have a couple of field trips planned. We were accepted to partnership with University of Wyoming ECHO-IN Geriatrics program, and this is where we'll take specific hard case studies, because we all know that psych in general for the state of Wyoming is very difficult to attain. Imagine that then being geri psych is even more difficult. And we used to, blend over to Idaho quite a bit and Utah, and we're finding that our referrals are not being taken quite as much because they're already full. This is a really needed. So UW made this really amazing program where it's a panel. These are geriatricians, registered dietitians, nurses, geri psych professionals. There's 14 people on the panel, and you can bring a specific case to them, and this is a free of charge thing. So we say, oh gosh, I just really do not know how to manage Dr. Burnett, right? And then we bring it together, we round table, and then we get suggestions on what is best case for that. We're leaning in very much into the memory care product line, and this is why I talked about psychotropic medications a little bit much earlier, okay? Because in memory care, we should see less of those, not more. And one of the recommendations for best practice is the Shabazz concept. Now, you will have heard of that through the Sheridan greenhouse model. So we're going to be a little bit that, but not completely. House or CNAs can do some housekeeping, some activities, service and support to provide a holistic model of care. Now, True Shabazz, they're making the meals also, and we will not be doing that. So it's a little bit of a hybrid, and we're going to lean into that product line. And I think that's my last slide. Can we fast forward? Okay, so what I'll tell you is that is what $5,000 worth of candy looks like. And it took up so much of the dining room. And my friend Connie, who said I could use her name, and I passed out candy we were supposed to end at 6, but we did not end until 7:15. And we were really tired. So that's what happens when you pass out $5,000 worth of candy. But it was a really good time. So does anybody have questions on what we're doing? Okay, well, it's an exciting future, so really thank you so much for your support. And yes, ma'am, please ask a question. Do.
On this Shabazz concept, is that, I guess, does that better support the memory care patients?
Yeah, so what we know is the more you can form that relationship, a core relationship, and not change those people out and not have a lot of change in structure, they tend to do better. Less behaviors, because one of the things that you'll need to be aware of as a board, and this is as it pertains to abuse, we've talked about it a little bit before, but resident to resident abuse still counts as abuse, right? That still abuse occurred in your facility. And so if you're just casually looking on that nursing home compare and your little 5-star, we don't want the red stop sign, the red hand that says abuse occurred here, especially I mean, I don't want to own it at all, but I really don't want to own it when it was between two people who, had dementia that maybe we should have been leaning into in activities and things like that. And so we do know on the surface level, best case is to not change routine, not change staff, keep everything low energy and as consistent as possible. That is not always practical, in the spirit of full disclosure, call-ins happen, people have to float, but we are going to do the best we can. So there'll be more education for me, which means information for you next quarter. To be continued. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Great report. Next item on the agenda is a report from Dom and Health Tech.
Hi, I'm here, and it looks like I saved myself $1.
Good job, Dom.
Obviously, we have a lot going on. Our major focus at the moment is most definitely in revenue cycle. But I'll get into that shortly. But we've had introductions with Steve, which has been great with members of our team. So Steve has met with Margaret, Alreen, John, who's the regional VP, has taken over from Patrick, and myself. So extremely happy to have Steve on site there. Very grateful for his involvement, which was desperately needed. I still got to introduce Steve to Jeff on the GPO side, and I really do want to get an update for the board in the very near future on the supply chain and GPO progress, because I think you need to get that from us. Then Margaret has been working with Lindsay, which has been great on and getting involved on revenue cycle manager interviews together with Lindsay. And she's very, very engaged with Doreen on getting the AR reports that we so desperately have needed. There's been some really good movement around the collector resource, and as of today, or yesterday actually, we have now identified somebody for that new collector role. Bill and I had a conversation about that today, and we should be able to get that in place very soon, hopefully even in the next few days. And then once we have the access that we need to Ocean stroke Epic dashboards on AR, as well as DNFB, CNFB reports, we'll have a better idea of the magnitude and scope of the billing and collections efforts that's going to be needed. On the older AR or the aging AR, we actually did manage to get a report as of yesterday. It's just an initial report, doesn't have a great deal of detail, but it has been incredibly helpful for us as we look at getting that old AR in the door, which based on cash flow, the cash flow situation of the hospital, that's something that we want to crunch and get going on ASAP, because there's a total amount there right now of approximately 2.5 million that we'd like to get in the door as quickly as we can. Just a very, 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 very basic breakdown of that, and I'll just give the big numbers. There's 500K in self-pay, approximately 500K in Medicare, 300K in Blue Cross Blue Shield, 140K in Medicaid Wyoming, 140K in commercial, and 140K in Tri-West. And then there are a whole lot of other amounts, obviously, but I just wanted to give you the bigger amounts because that's what we want to concentrate on, getting that money in the door. Obviously, we can't help on the self-pay side, that $500,000, but I know that Bill and Steve, and I think Bill will address that in his update, because I think even as of today, they've come up with a plan of how to collect the self-pay. And then John is working with Steve on reviewing the financial statements. And of course, we'll be working with him on the budget redo. And I know that John has just recently communicated to me that He's also going to put together an action plan grid, which I think will be very, very helpful for everybody. With regards to those collections that I mentioned, we're going to have to start those in reverse order, starting with the oldest accounts based on filing date limitations and grouped by payer. Typically, we would start on the largest amounts and work downwards from there. But based on this situation, we're going to need to start in reverse order on those collections. I think one of the big concerns right now, big discussion with myself and Bill earlier on today, lots of discussion and lots of investigation that needs to be done, and I know that Steve has got that underway, is that we are unsure which claims have not been billed, and that's a problem that we need to address as a matter of urgency. And that's my report for today. You know, as I said earlier on, a major focus for us is to get that old age AR money back in the door. So that's what we do.
Dom, can you remind me, as you're talking about the aging AR, what the statute of limitations is on that for back billing? Is it 1 year for most payers?
They vary, Tanya. But yeah, some of them up to 1 year. Medicaid is probably the longest, and then quickest payer is Medicare. So we want to concentrate on where we can get paid the fastest.
Okay, I appreciate
But
that.
they do vary.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have questions for Dom? It was a great update. Thank you, Dom.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Bill, CEO report. Next item on the agenda.
So if I could make a comment going back to Dr. Burnett's presentation, as he was talking about some of our volumes, one of the things that will be part of a strategic planning process will be market retention data. So we'll be presented with information about how many patients from our service area are going other places, and usually we're able to say where they're going so we can identify who a primary competitor. So I think we probably know a lot about that, but it would still be useful to have actual hard data showing how many people we keep, how many people we lose. And I don't know whether it's available in Wyoming, but in some reports I've even seen it down to like the specialty level. So where does OB go? Where does general surgery go? That sort of thing. But that's very important information as we do a strategic plan and look at market retention. Oh, and I wanted to just remind you, so this is the second month of our new quarterly rotation. So Lane did a presentation last month, Dr. Burnett and Don this month, and then Lindsay's departments would be the third month of the quarter. So that's just part of the new rotation. So you can see that the reports were a little bit more robust, but fewer of them. So mine, I start with people. So first of all, wanted to let you know that we're working on a recognition event for our dear Lindsay. Keep December 3rd open on your schedules. And then something a little bit lighthearted to offset that is I'm going to suggest that we create an employee celebration fund. So remember last meeting, I asked the question about should we do employee gifts, and I said the light was red and we left it red. I've seen this in other public organizations where the employees themselves donate to a fund. So think about it. If we have an average of 225 employees, and we have more than that, but just use that, and each employee were to donate $2 a paycheck toward this fund, we would have a nice amount of money to do what I would suggest 2 events a year, a summer picnic and then a holiday celebration. And then we could offset most, if not all, of the criticism about using public funds for celebrations. And it's my sense that almost every employee can afford $1 or $2 a paycheck. So I've already run this idea by Lena. And she says that actually the idea of having it sort of in a sequestered account would be a good thing, and to be able to not use public dollars. So I'm going to assume that this light is green unless you tell me otherwise, but I think this is a nice opportunity to get the employees involved. We'll create a committee then that would give ideas on how to use the money. Admin would have the veto authority just in case they wanted to do something too wild and crazy. But going to move forward with that. Business office director or revenue cycle, whatever title we want to use. God has smiled on us, and we have found a wonderful candidate who lives in Pinedale, but works remotely at the Rollins Hospital. Interviewed, she checks off all the boxes that we need. And we are now in discussions about what an offer would look like. She needs to give 30 days notice, but it would be my hope that we could get her in here before that. After all, isn't that what weekends are for? So I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to do this, and then the on-site leadership that we've needed will finally have that in place. So very, very good potential there. I wanted to give you a quick update. This was covered at the foundation board meeting, and so I just want to make sure that the district board is aware of it. We have completed a new employment agreement with Carrie. So in the past, she was more of a benefited employee. At her request, we have moved her to 20 hours a week. So that's, according to our definitions, PRN. So she doesn't receive any benefits in this model. We looked at what the current pay scale for people of her position with her experience, what that would be, and using existing internal processes, came up with what the rate should be, presented that rate to Carrie, and it was acceptable. So I think you had heard that there was a proposal initially that she have a PRN position for marketing and PR, and then a separate contract for foundation. This avoids that. So it's a single agreement with the district to cover both responsibilities. And the conversation that we had at the foundation board, the model that I like having is that the foundation executive director and marketing person be completely on our payroll, that there is no cost sharing with the foundation. And what this does is it allows us to say to a donor, none of your money is going to overhead. I mean, you see people on TV say, 93% of our money goes to what? Well, we can say to our donors, 100% of their money goes with this model. So I think it's a cleaner model. I think that it positions us to allow Carrie to have the quality of life that she needs based on where her family is, and allows us to retain a person that has proved themselves to be invaluable as we move forward with fundraising projects. So I just wanted to give this board a summary of that. So as I've mentioned before, the senior leadership team is working to update our on-call policy. In fact, at a meeting earlier today, we went through that. It's my intent to have that policy completed and ready to go by the end of November. I want it to be in place so that over the Christmas and New Year's holiday, which involves call, we can have that covered. So we're doing a number of things. We're standardizing both the on-call process and the call-in process. We're using part of the existing pay structure. The current policy actually has multiple rates. One rate for weekday evenings, a different rate for weekends. That's not the way on-call policies typically work. They're usually one number anytime you're on call. So we're doing that, so it's going to be a lower number. We're also including the departments that we're going to require have an on-call policy. And so that's going to be information services, plant operations, housekeeping, and who am I forgetting? Imaging, thank you. So those departments will be required to have an on-call schedule so that we can have the coverage that we need if an emergency comes up. But then the policy is also going to be designed such that, I'll use nursing as an example. If we have 3 nurses on and we have no inpatients, we could send a nurse home and put them on call so that if volumes were to change and we needed to call them back, they actually have motivation to not have that glass of wine or, beer, so that they could come back in. So I am very pleased with the conversation the senior leadership team is having. And so that's an area that I just wanted you to know that I'm assuming that the light is green. This is going to put us in a much better position. So I think I mentioned to you before, IT is taking call, but not getting paid for it. And that's just not right. So I want to get this fixed and get it fixed soon. We're also working on a number of policies, some of which I'm going to need to talk with the board about before I make any changes. So on those policies, I'm assuming the light is yellow. So I'm going to come and talk to you about some of these policies because I need to get your input and buy-in on making changes to some of them, especially if it's a benefit-related policy. So just to let you know that that's coming. Number 2, medical staff. So I don't remember whether I talked about this at the last meeting, but the idea that I have for a different model to staff our hospitalist program. Dr. Burnett alluded to this. We have had conversations with the medical staff. So a couple weeks ago, sat down with the medical staff and I went into a lot of detail. First, I started with finances from September. So I showed them what our current financial reality is. And then I shared with them the idea for this new model. And then we went into operational topics. They were expecting me to talk about production. I needed to keep them off their toes. But I need to make sure that we are not in any way limiting their ability to practice medicine because of inefficient policies and processes. So we had a great conversation. Based on that conversation, I actually have a meeting tomorrow with OCHN to look at some of the support that they ask that we get from OCHN, whether it's for training or rebuilding templates. So taking very seriously what they talked about, that we're going to try and improve their throughput by improving our processes. But the plan is that we would, whenever we can and whenever it's appropriate, cancel the contract with Apogee. And instead of having Apogee staff, our hospitalists, and now they're doing nursing home services, we would recruit 4 of our own doctors. With what we're paying Apogee, we actually could pay for 5 doctors. We don't need 5 doctors to cover the hospitalist service. So we hire 4 and we can save about $350,000 over what we're currently paying. Plus, we'll be able to get the revenue for the inpatient patient visits that right now is sort of absorbed within the Apogee cost structure. And we're going to be able to have them work half-time in the clinic. So if we bring in 4 doctors, then we're going to be adding the equivalent of 2 FTEs to the clinic. So Steve talked about volumes. This is a way for us to create capacity. And so if you go back to why are we moving all of these offices, it's so that we can create capacity within the clinic, convert spaces back into clinical that we have converted into office space so that we have room to put these doctors. And I don't want to wait until we recruit the doctors to clear up the space. I want to make sure we're well ahead of the curve, knowing that we can fit these doctors in the building. It's going to take us an effort to recruit because this is an unusual model, seeing patients in the hospital and the clinic. But there are some doctors. So Dr. Burnett likes to say we're hunting for Wyoming zebras with square ears. Did I get that right?
Certainly, it's a hybrid.
Yeah. I say we're going to be recruiting for unicorns, but I believe it's something we can do because I think there are a small set of doctors that want that model. And we're going to leverage the attractiveness of Pinedale. So there are going to be a couple of things that we'll be talking about over the next couple of months. I talked with the foundation board about potentially having them support the recruitment. So just as an example, if we were to say that it will cost us approximately $85,000 to recruit a doctor between the recruiter fee, the relocation, and the signing bonus, wouldn't it be cool to let people support that recruiting effort? So I could say, I helped recruit Dr. Smith. So that's something. And then housing. I have ideas that I want to talk with you in the future about how we might be able to offset some of the impediments related to housing. But the medical staff, so we talked about 2 weeks ago, came back to it. Was that just today? That was just today, Tuesday.
They all work together.
And they supported it. There was no pushback at all. So there's still going to be a lot of work to define all of this, but the first step is starting recruitment. So I'm assuming that the light is green to begin this recruitment. The recruiting contracts, unless we change the rules on those will be brought to you before they're signed. I'm not going to pursue anything that's retained. But I'm excited about this. The current Apogee contract goes until June, and then it has 120-day cancellation. I'm not sure that we're going to be ready to have that contract canceled until the summer, because to recruit docs probably is going to take us that long. But I've already had a preliminary conversation with Apogee leadership about this direction. Assuming the board is comfortable with this, then I'll do follow-up and see whether or not there's a role that they could play to support us in this transition. But I think this is essential, both to address the cost for covering the hospital side, but also increasing capacity within the clinic side. So I'll pause and see if you have questions about that model. Okay, good. And so I'll be working with Lena regarding canceling the Apogee contract and balancing our desire to cancel the expense against the time we need to recruit new physicians. Let's see, I already talked about that. Oh, just examples of things that the docs brought up as far as improvement opportunities. We need to make sure that our patients arrive on time. So what sort of reminder system do we have? How do we more efficiently room our patients? There's training on coding, and part of that health stream will be an option, and then provide assistance in the overall use of Epic. And that's part of what I'm going to talk about with Ochin tomorrow, to actually get someone here on site, shoulder to shoulder with the provider, so that when they have a question real time, we'd be able, so to give them a half day each with an Ochin person. So we're going to work on that. Finance. So Dom already alluded to this as part of our effort to bring in that $500,000 of self-pay. And a lot of that is in the old Epic system. We're going to explore the idea of doing a special discount program. So I'll just make up numbers. If you've got 10,000 that you owe us, and you pay the balance today, we'll give you 20% off. Because I would much rather have dollars today, and a lot of this money is in payment plans, so it's going to be spread over years. We talked about it today in a call that Lindsay and Margaret and Doreen were on. We're going to get Steve and Michelle involved, but that's one thing that we're going to look at. And then I'm assuming that I can work with Lena to cancel the DZA contract. So that's one that I'm assuming the light is green. I want to get that done in November, so that then it's a 30-day out. So then by the end of December, that one can be gone. So I appreciated Dom's suggestion about the revised budget for the second 6 months of the year. As Steve mentioned, I need him and Michelle to give me a by-win date, and that's going to be tied to cash issues that we'll talk about more. And I was surprised to learn the degree, and Dom mentioned this as well, the number of dollars that aren't reflected on our financial statements. This came up at Finance Committee yesterday. So dollars that would be pre-billed that somehow haven't been captured. And so there's a category, what did you call it, Steve, that you put?
Discharge not.
But you called it a category on the income statement that you put all of it into the income?
Yeah, you can accrue for the discharge.
So we're gonna do that so that we can have a more complete estimate to show you as far as our revenue. Because right now, last month and this month, our revenue was about 1.2 million low. What if 400,000 a month is showing up as that discharge not final billed? I mean, that's a completely different picture. So that's an area that we're going to clean up on the financials. And then, as Dom mentioned, Sarah McMillan is the lady's name that's going to be provided by Health Tech to help us. We've requested access to the software systems that she needs. As soon as we have that in place, she can get started. And then just a couple more things under miscellaneous. So assuming that we have the needed IT connections in place so that the two campuses talk to each other, I'm wanting to have all of the office moves done before Christmas. And that's, I really want to have the clinic have time to settle into the new space so that when those doctors come and visit us, we can show them this is where your office will be, this is where your exam rooms are. Not, well, we're going to work on that after you sign. So we're going to have a walk around on the 2nd of December, arm wrestling for who gets what space. On a personal note, I'm going to be driving home Friday of this week, and then I'll be out all of next week, but I'll have my phone and my trusty laptop if I'm needed. I'll be back on the following Monday, so the 1st of December, and then I'll be here straight until the 19th of December. So about 3 weeks. And if we could later, I'd like to talk about what my schedule would be after the first of the year. And then last thing, Doc Burnett took Lane and I down to the Marbleton Clinic. It was a great visit. I want to do that at least once a month, go down and meet with the staff. They had a lot of ideas. I made a joke. You know, if anyone has a list, I'm ready. And someone pulled out a list. They called my bluff. It was quite, funny. But I really think that it's important for us to both be perceived, but really have a better connection with those two communities. And we will do that through having our employees in those clinics feeling good about being part of us rather than redheaded stepchildren. So my presence there, Lane's presence, we'll be taking Steve down so that he can meet them. But I really think that's something that we need to focus on is leadership presence in the Marbleton Clinic. Those were things I wanted to report on. I've got a number of executive session topics, big surprise. But I'm happy to answer questions on anything else you'd like to ask of me.
I have a dumb question. I should know this by now, but are we utilizing the ED space in the clinic, Pinedale Clinic at all for anything right now at the moment?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're still running same-day urgent care program.
For the entire space, though?
Yes.
Okay.
And they are seeing, if I remember right, Vicki, you can help me, somewhere 12, 15 a day. Is that about right?
Okay, thank you. I just wasn't sure if we were kind of pushed that into the entire space or what we were doing, so.
No, so I would tell you before Saturday, I would have been inclined to say we need to do that sooner than later. But days like Saturday, and hopefully we'll have more of them, I don't think that the ability for the ER and the urgent care center to be absorbed into the single space, at least in the short term. If the layout of the ER was different, or if we had another room that we could look at occupying for patient care within the ER. So those are things that I'm going to put on the next person's plate. For right now, I think leaving the model as it is. So when Dr. Burnett was talking about recruiting the two people, I had a different opinion 2 weeks ago than I have today.
Okay, thank you.
So on that busy day with 21 people, did we have enough space to put all of those people, or was that?
We had a couple leave because they were tired of waiting. And so there are things that we can look at to try and address that. So, and I'm not meaning to be critical of staff, but how frequent were we going out and giving updates as far as, you know, right? And then I think that we need to look at the possibility of flexing space. So were we using the trauma rooms for a single patient, or can we flex them to two? So it's a great opportunity for us to look at what do we do when we get a high volume? You know, not mass casualty, but just 20 is a pretty big day for us. And so now that we've had it, people they're not going to say, oh, we'll never see that. It's a reality, so we can actually do some planning and improving processes.
Very good. Questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, yes, Steve.
Before you move on to full business, I want to clarify the question that you asked about caution. Hadn't thought it through.
Sorry, I didn't mean to blindside you.
Since
We've just been taught,
operating as a
ask
PPS hospital.
about the cost report, you know, so.
As a PPS hospital, when we convert to critical access, we will have to do a cost report that interim period of time that we were a PPS hospital.
That's what I thought.
It'll be 5 months, it'll be due 5 months after the critical access certification.
Okay. Okay.
I need
That's
to
what I was
confirm some of
unclear
that,
on.
But there will be that partial year cost report. And then there'll be a second partial year cost report.
It's critical access.
It's critical access. Now, sometimes, depending on how long a period of time it is, one cost report.
And that,
I doubt that that's going to be the case here. It's usually a few weeks, but anything more than 2 months, not 2 separate contracts.
okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Sorry for that I gave an incomplete answer.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. This is kind of still all new to us, so I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around it. Thank you. All right. We can now move into old business. And the first item of old business is approval of payroll and bills. I will open it up for motion. That would include, we can do that in one motion to do the invoices over the specified amount, or we can do those separately, whatever is preferable for you guys. There are a lot this month.
Okay. Madam Chair, I would move to approve payroll and bills for the month of October 2025 in the amount to $3,394,780.50, as well as all of the invoices over 20.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Kenda. We have a motion. You. Are there questions? Comments? Concerns? All right, so for the motion to approve payroll and bills, and including all invoices as specified over $20,000, all in favor, please say aye.
Yeah.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, the next item under old business is final review of the delegation of authority and the revisions that we've steadily been making to that over the last month or two.
So I do have one question on this, and it kind of ties into another item as well. So I don't know if I need to wait to ask it, but it's in regards to item 12. So it states that all agreements shall be approved by the board and signed by the CEO for medical staff agreements. And that part of the review process is done by CEO, CFO, CNO, COO, department director, legal counsel, and or the board of trustees. So when they're reviewing those contracts and agreements and it's being reviewed by legal counsel and we still have to approve them, should we be getting a copy of that? I know that was discussed previously in the meeting. It wasn't part of, and I guess there was some sort of agreement that would approve the contracts, but we don't necessarily have to review the contracts. I did not see that in our meeting minutes, and it doesn't reflect the same here, so I didn't know if it needed to be it or not.
Was that discussion that took place last month? I don't recall.
It's prior to that.
Yeah.
So if I can speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the idea is that primarily I work with Lena to develop the contract to make sure that it's legally compliant, that it's consistent with our internal policies, that it is competitive as far as in GMA. And then I present a summary of that board. Then not having the board actually see the document, but knowing that we have a standard template that we use for our contracts. And then each one is unique based on the specialty of the position. And then we have standard practice as far as loan repayment, that sort of thing. So the intent was to lighten the load on the board, still allow the board to know that established processes were being followed, that appropriate compensation was being offered.
Absolutely.
That was the concept.
So we do have the summary, and I did see where that is for credentialing that we receive. Are we going to be receiving a template for those contracts
I
or
hadn't thought
summary?
about that. I'd be happy to do that. We could
I
do
was
a
just
similar-
thinking if we're reviewing, if we're technically approving this, but we're not seeing even the summary, I just wanted to make sure we're doing our judiciary responsibility by doing that, if we're approving it, but not seeing the full.
And so I have been anticipating this would be verbal, but to do a one-page
Okay.
summary similar to what we're doing with the credentials, I think that's a great idea.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Is everybody comfortable with that?
I had a question for you, Bill, on item 14, which is on check signatures. So it does say on there, hard checks for payments greater than $100,000 shall require 2 signatures. So I remember there was some discussion that that's not necessarily 2 board signatures. That might be your signature and a board member. I would just ask that we put some clarification around who those 2 signatures have to be.
So my suggestion on this would be what I'll call the global controlling document. And then we should have specific policies
Okay.
under it that would speak so that checks,
For specific
for
things.
example, I think we should have a policy
Okay.
on that in and of itself. That then would be consistent with this, but would have the level of detail you're referring to.
Okay.
And it does look like it
Okay.
says CFO / CEO and
Yeah.
1 board member.
So the intent is not to ever have admin only signing checks.
Right.
But this would share responsibility. Yep.
I like the shared responsibility.
And the emergency, one. So you had asked for, and so I changed that a
Yes.
little bit. To show the connection to patient care or an employee safety.
Yes.
That's part of the definition of emergency.
Okay.
Did that wording make sense?
It made sense to me. Questions I had. Thank you.
I guess just another question on capital purchases. I know we kind of left an open-ended question. And if we already have a policy around that, but that's maybe something we would just be creating as part of.
And so if we do, then I want to go back and ensure that it says what we wanted to say. If we don't, then we create it.
Can you refresh my memory, because some of this discussion took place when I was absent last month regarding emergency purchases? What is the exceeded normal? What is the normal amount that we're talking about exceptions for?
So I'll give you a specific example. And it may not apply right now, but service on this. Experienced this before. Didn't have the service contract. But service contract we had on our CD machine excluded last tube. The tube itself can be $100,000. And so if the tube were to die Thursday night, Friday morning, something, you can't wait, go through a process to get that. So that would be a specific example where I would do notification to the board. I wouldn't wait for any approval from the board and getting order and service lined up.
Yeah, understood. Okay.
And that's why I had asked if patient and or resident care or employee safety to be kind of specified in there of what would qualify under emergencies.
Okay. Okay. Are we ready to approve these revisions or in full? I kind of feel bad not having full board here to approve final revisions, but what do you guys think?
So a suggestion, I could give you a clean document. You could add it to the agenda for the next.
I like that. I would appreciate having all 5 board members here to make the final approval. Comfortable with it.
Will you also include that a summary to be provided with physician? Like,
Yes.
kind of like with the,
Yes.
just so that way it's noted in there and it's very clear expectation. Ours and.
And actually, I could also add. These will be a footnote, but that as appropriate, controlling policies will be developed. Individual items.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
No action.
No action. Which puts us at new business. Of items of new business. We have infection prevention and control program. And resolutions in that regard, excuse me.
This one is being brought to you because it's a CMS.
That was one.
Actually, it's unusual in my experience. Filing board to have a position of this type. It is required, so that's what the resolution is about. So we can check off that.
So it really is the specific appointment, not just that we have.
Yes,
So if put a new person in that position, we do that.
you get your resolution.
Is that the
That's
same?
the case.
Is that the same requirement, whether we're PPS or critical access or?
Yes.
Anyone have questions? Further questions about this or?
I guess I just have one. So in the title under diligent, it shows resolution -18 or number 18-2025. But on the document itself, it shows it blank. That number be changing.
It just was left to be filled in, I think, so we can ensure that.
That's
we're
fine.
Correct in them.
I just wanted to make sure when I made a motion that I was correct on it being 18-2025. Okay, I would move to approve resolution number 18-2025.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. Second. And a second. Thank you. Any further discussion? Resolution as it stands. Okay, all in favor of approval of resolution 18-2025, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we then have some physician contracts to discuss. We'll have some discussion in executive regarding those. So we'll move on to the next item, which is meeting ground rules document.
I told you before. This through 3 different levels, so department directors, medical staff, and senior leadership. And we're suggesting that the board, once you don't have to have a official motion. The one change that was mentioned at medical staff meeting was the reference to cell phones. And they were saying that they didn't want to get in trouble during patient communication. If their nurse sends them a text, they're gonna be on their phone. And so I gave the example, I have no problem with that kind of communication. What I don't want you doing is doing your Amazon shopping during a meeting. And they seem to understand that distinction. So with that clarification, no one else has any other suggested amendments to the document. This is just trying to create standard expectations as far as our behavior and attendance at meetings.
I think it's very reasonable.
I love it. I want to
Yeah.
send it out to people I work with.
I know, it's
That
really
don't
good.
respond to my meetings and then just don't show up and I have to schedule another one.
I love that it references inside voice. Made me laugh. So I like it. Anyone have any comments otherwise?
I wasn't sure where it was coming from, to be honest. I was like, what? I feel like our board meetings have been great. And I feel like this is standard practice. Like I was a little concerned, like what has happened? But I feel like it's standard practice, and if there needs to be ground rules in place for it just kind of to be a general courtesy, it's great to have them.
And I thought it would be good, the board would demonstrate leadership, that you're following the same rules you're expecting.
Understood. Understood.
So the minutes.
Creates a
give us
culture of respect
The board reviewed
across the board.
and supports the implementation of the meeting ground rules document.
I think that's safe to say, supported. All right, and then we have one more document that Bill's prepared for leadership positions.
So this one, again, I'm just wanting you to be aware of what we're working on. I'm not asking you to formally bless it or approve it. But I think it's important that we have consistent definitions of the titles that we use in the organization and what the authorities are that go with those. So we talked about this morning at senior leadership, and the conversation centered on the last two. So once you get down to a manager, all of that is pretty straightforward. A coordinator, so it talks about some supervision responsibility. And so the question is, what is supervision? And so my point of view, the supervision that I'm not wanting a coordinator or a lead to do is involving a discipline, hire, fire. So if you're the dietary director, you're the dietary coordinator, you're gone, you're in charge, you would be able to send someone home. I don't want you writing them up. I want you providing information as a manager. Because that is such a dangerous area if we do it wrong. And so that's why those last two have the restriction as far as level of supervision. So it's not that they can't oversee someone, supervise in the sense of discipline. That's one of the key, and then of course, matter. So we may see about tightening up wording in those last two as it relates to that. But in general, I just wanted you to. And so once we have this document complete, then we're going to go through the organization, look at everyone who has a title, see if it needs to be adjusted. So it's just FYI, if you have any comment, I'm happy to hear the comment, but that's what I was trying to do.
I thought it was really helpful.
Yeah.
Bring everything outlined.
It's the same thing as the previous one. It just sets very clear expectation and standards.
Okay, thank you, Bill. You
Yes.
have any other comments? Okay, we will move on then. We have no FOIA requests to consider or hear this month. So the last item of new business would be the October pay app, and I would just ask that you give me signatory authority to sign that even before review of the board in order to get that out in a timely manner once received. So we have it kind of waiting in the wings and working on drafts currently, but I would like to be able to kind of catch things up with the shutdown, if at all possible, and get that submitted ASAP. So,
Madam Chair, I would move that we have for Chair Tanya, signature authority for the November pay app is ready.
You can do. Another motion.
Say November.
Oh, is it
October.
November? It's October, sorry.
It's October, sorry.
October.
Thanks for catching that.
Well, second.
Thanks. We have a motion in a second. Any questions about those or? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
I'm sure I'd like to abstain my vote.
Thank you, and I will vote aye. The motion carries. One abstention. Thank you. All right, that puts us at the end of our business matters thus far, and we will need to enter into an executive session for the matters of personnel, real estate, contracts, and legal advice. So I would ask for a motion.
Motion to go into executive session for the purpose of personnel, real estate, contracts, and legal advice.
Thank you. Motion. Okay. Second. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. We will enter in and.
The restroom.
Yes, let's do a brief recess for break, please. I know.
There's like, they're soft. I want to sit one of these, I think.